Hello, greetings. This is Lotus with Art of Sacred Embodiment. Today I want to talk about natural time, sacred rhythm within intimate relationships, within romantic partnerships. Whether that's the conscious relationship moving into sacred and divine unions. Those are the way that I see those are different developmental stages of learning and growing, both individually and or in connection with our right aligned chosen person, or whether that alignment is shifting up on us and the growth phase is moving in a different direction. Either one, this is appropriate, and both phases and stages in the paradigm that I work with is imperfection. And more about that probably at a different point in time. But what I want to talk about is, what is your natural time? How do you flow organically? And what is your sacred rhythm? What is the way in which your own body clock, for instance, or body clocks, recognizing that all of our organs have their own body clocks, right? They're operating optimally at different times of the day in connection with sun, light, and darkness. All of our cells have their own body clocks. And part of what this does when we can align and attune in this way, we enter into a deeper level of health and vitality, wellness, knowing thyself, honoring thyself. And when we start from there, from recognizing what is my natural flow, what is my flow that keeps me in harmony, in balance, that keeps me open, that keeps me spacious, that keeps me open-hearted, that keeps me grounded, that keeps me in a state of coherence. And obviously we can't stay within that perfect state all the time. However, when we know our own rhythm, we know how to get back easier and more simply without our own distortions sort of rumbling out, right, into the field of our loved ones, without rumbling out into our energy field, creating contraction and tension and agitation and frustration. So when I talk about natural time and sacred rhythm, I actually have a full class on that I did a few years ago that is on YouTube right now. We really dove deep into understanding and recognizing our individual flow. Where do we feel good? What is our, when we're operating in a healthy, balanced way, then the way that we live our life, our needs and our rhythms are going to continue to keep us informed what is healthy and balanced for us. What is the best time for me to get up in the morning, where I wake up naturally and I feel alert and awake and open and ready for the day? What is that time that I really need to go to bed in order, right, for that cycle to stay in harmony? When am I actually hungry? And what are the foods that I know from my body are going to really nourish me and feed me? We're all going to be very different. We aren't a one size fits all. And if we look at our body types from the perspective, for instance, of Ayurveda and the doshas, and I always work with all of my clients within an outline of the Ayurvedic doshas, because that's going to start to inform us and educate us really from this ancient science of how do I function optimally? What are those qualities that I really need? And first I have to know what my qualities are innately, when they're in balance, when they're out of balance. So for instance, if you have more air and space or fire in your makeup, then you're going to need something very different than somebody who's primarily earth and water. And when we're in relationship, what tends to happen is, because we want to spend time together, we have certain activities where we feel more connected. But if we're in a bit of a polar opposite of our partner, which in essence does tend to bring some balance, if we don't know how to work with that constructively, then what's going to happen is it's going to butt up. And there's probably going to be areas where we're compromising, which aren't true compromises. They're compromises maybe with obligation, with resentment, with compromising our true needs, and those are going to creep up in the aftermath, right? And they're going to bleed through because we're not truly in our alignment and honoring that. So it's recognizing and experimenting. First, understanding the basics. What is your dosha, for instance? You can do simple dosha tests on online. And you can just put in dosha quiz, right? Ayurvedic dosha quiz. And it will give you some information. And that is a jumping off point. And that's perfect to do for your partner as well. And then having a conversation, an honest, straightforward, connected, intimate conversation with your partner about, here's what I'm learning about my deep needs. And they can recognize what they're learning about their deep needs. And within those conversations, you can recognize, where do I have the space and the ability in order to come into a place of coexisting alignments, where our alignments can marry effortlessly, and when we need to move off into our own rhythm and flow effortlessly as well. And the more that we understand this, neither person needs to take it personally, right? And as we start hitting the conscious and sacred and divine relationship and union phases, we've done this preliminary work. We've already healed our storylines, our areas of insecurity, our issues around abandonment and fears of abandonment, of loss. What do I experience when my partner might be just in their own space, doing their own thing, and I feel like they're disconnected? So oftentimes we stay in an imbalanced place of compromise and connection, and that actually does start to set up the potential for disconnection. Not because we want to be disconnected from our partner, but oftentimes we're trying to get back home to our own energy and to our own self. But if these things aren't talked about, if there isn't the awareness, if the communication isn't going on, and if we haven't grown into the phases and stages where we know that it's okay to honor my own beingness and what my truth is first, to know how to practice self-care through this deep cultivated self-awareness and self-love. And ideally, our partner is doing that same thing. So that when we come together, because we can honor ourselves individually we can then honor what the other person needs and understand it's about them. It's not about us. And that means even, meal times. What foods do we eat? Right? It can make things maybe a little bit more complicated in some ways. If you're eating different foods, if you have different tastes. And at the same time, it can bring new kinds of variety in. It can bring new creativity into the mix. And the same thing with what is our flow in bedtime and waking time. Or rather, bedtime, waking time. That works. Because that can be another crux, another glitch in our union. And if we have somebody who functions more, let's say, with more kapha energy in the dosha, more water and earth, naturally they're going to be more inclined to stay up and awake later. A vata is going to be ready and should actually wind down and then get up earlier, and a kapha gets up a little later. That if we're listening to our rhythm, then there's going to probably be these gaps when maybe we're actually wanting deeper connection and deeper intimacy. If you're a couple that really loves to go to bed together, however, you have very different schedules and very different needs, so either that need does not get met for both of you, or it gets met and one or both of you is not really able to be completely present in that time. And the same in the morning. And I bring that up because that's my personal experience. Recognizing that in the morning, I'm not more apt to kind of, lull around and feel extra warm and cozy. Being a vata, my brain kicks in and I'm ready to get going. I'm ready to work. I'm ready to, to get a move on. A kapha wakes up a little bit slower and a little bit later and might really like that kind of hangout time. The same can be true in the opposite at the evening hours. So how is this navigated? First, both people need to really understand what is my rhythm, my true rhythm. And experiment with that, play with that, right? Honor it, even if it starts to feel like it's creating this sensation of disconnect. Because if it's feeling the sensation of disconnect, then that's still there to work with and to bring healing and resolution to and deeper understanding. And then you can find your own rhythm, and then you can begin to come back together and say, okay, these are the times, maybe 3 times a week, 4 times a week, we can find where we meet in the middle. Who has the highest threshold? Catherine and Gay Hendricks in Conscious Loving, my favorite part that has stuck with me the most over these decades is talking about the upper limits. Who has the highest or lowest threshold of need? Usually the person that has the lowest threshold of need is going to kind of rule the relationship, and not necessarily in a real positive way if we don't have this awareness. So then understanding, okay, I have the lowest threshold. My needs for touch and affection, cuddling, holding is perhaps, greater than my partner's. Then we get to come together and find when is that time when we can both be served and nourished and present with it. in a way that honors both people's needs. This is just one example. It could, other examples could be how social is one person, how a little bit more introverted is another person. What kind of activities do we both like to do? The same kind of activities? Do we like to do very different activities? What are our priorities and values that really light us up, so to speak, right? And where do they fall within a harmonious balance and honor with our partner? Because we need some of these opposites for sure, and we also need enough of those deeper core needs to be understood and worked with consciously. So both people are able to be present with one another with their full attention so that those needs are met, right? If I go and like spend time with my partner or my ex-husband, for instance, maybe at a time where I'm super low energy and I'm just tired and I'm exhausted, but I feel obligated and I do love him, but I really want to do this, right? To show up. But if I'm really in my own compromised position internally, if I'm like way out of whack, I might show up here, I might be impatient, I might not be able to, to bring and meet the joy or whatever it is that he's experiencing or she's experiencing. Use this however it resonates with you. And then they're not really getting benefited because we're not honestly present. So neither are winning, but we're showing up based on this programming that we carry, this conditioning. And we just have to learn, right, how to finesse these dynamics through deeper self-awareness and self-knowledge so that we can come into harmony. We may have amazing, partnerships that have been great, and we balance in so many amazing ways, and yet it may not really be the deeper, intimate, romantic relationship that is being sought, that's being truly needed or desired. And this was the beauty of, my ex-husband and I, because we had this great friendship, right? We had like amazing conversations. We had amazing adventures. We both have been able to like ride the waves of adventure and change and transformation. So spiritually, we were like on it, which was the most important thing for both of us at that time for, 16 years. But we change and grow in relationships, ideally, as well. Our needs change and grow. Who we were begins to morph and shift, and if we're paying attention, we can do this together. So my ex-husband and I, we had many things, and it served us. But when things started changing and needs started changing and phases of life brought in new rhythms and new flows, the opposites weren't nourishing us anymore. And there wasn't a way that we could get them to fit back because that season was gone. So we got to really work with that consciously. We got to address, we got to get really real, get really honest with ourselves, get really honest with one another, and transition, because we were honoring our inner truths and our inner knowing, and we're still, amazing friends. And it's easier, right? Because we don't need the same balance or anything anymore. So, and we got to work through those messages that we were carrying that we hadn't already resolved, even though we'd resolved a lot of them together. There was still those areas of, disconnection or not feeling valued or not feeling important enough or, not feeling really loved or, having insecurities. And so we got to get really clear and recognize, oh, it's not about any of that. It's just simply about what our alignment is individually at this juncture. And now we need to grow into our next phase, readjust, make new lives and patterns for ourselves. And we were able to do that from all of the deeper tools and skills of having a very conscious relationship. So, know that your natural time and sacred rhythm is in your blueprint. It is what keeps you operating and appreciating and living in life more fully. And it's honoring your sovereignty even within a relationship, honoring the other person's sovereignty even within a relationship. If their threshold is the lowest, if their needs are greater at any given time, negotiate, adjust, and show up when you can, in the best way that you can. And sometimes there is that extra compromise, like, wow, I just really am not feeling it, but I do have the capacity to be with my beloved in his needs at this time, or her needs at this time, or their needs, however you need that to be at this time. But you're coming from choice. You're coming from reading your own room, so to speak. Like, read the room. Read the room. What's your room look like? Do you have it to give? How full or empty is your cup? Honor that to come into the highest states of whatever phase and stage of relationship that you're in. And this can go for all relationships, but we're talking mainly about romantic relationships. All right, so I hope that's helpful. And this is definitely an area of work that I love, working with both couples and individuals as we evolve and open up to deeper levels of who we are and knowing thyself more deeply. So, blessings. Have a wonderful, wonderful time, whatever this is for you. Take care.